You're not supposed to win like that. Not as a rookie, not after handing the defense 2 early gifts, not after watching one of your most reliable weapons disappear in the middle of a division fight. And definitely not in Cleveland against Pittsburgh, where games usually expose quarterbacks instead of elevating them. But somehow, that's exactly what happened. On paper, this game doesn't make sense. The box score doesn't tell the real story, and the highlights barely scratch the surface of what actually shifted on that field. Because this wasn't about pretty throws or clean football. It was about something much harder to measure. The kind of moment where a young quarterback either shrinks under pressure or shows you he belongs. The kind of game coaches quietly file away in their memory, not for the mistakes, but for how a player responds when everything starts leaning the wrong way. And in this one, every lever was working against him. What made this night different wasn't just the final score. It was the way the sideline felt, the calm where you expect panic, the trust where you expect hesitation. While the noise outside kept getting louder, something inside the Browns' operation shifted, almost unnoticed. A decision wasn't announced, nothing was declared, but it was made all the same. And once you look past the interceptions, past the injury, past the chaos, you start to see it clearly. This game wasn't just a win, it was a test. And the way it was handled may have quietly answered the biggest question Cleveland has been wrestling with for years. The only question now is whether anyone realized it in real time, or if we're only just starting to see what this moment actually set in motion. You could feel it slipping early, the kind of slow, sinking feeling that usually settles in when a rookie quarterback starts pressing in a division game. One interception put Cleveland on edge, the second one tightened the knot. Against the Steelers, in a stadium that feeds off mistakes, that's normally the beginning of the end. Defenses like that don't ease up. They smell uncertainty, and they go hunting for it. By every familiar script, this is where the game turns lopsided. The play calling gets conservative, the quarterback starts checking down out of fear instead of strategy, the crowd grows restless. But what made this night different is that none of that happened. The scoreboard said the Browns were still alive, but the real surprise was that the offense never looked rattled. The mistakes didn't snowball, they just stopped defining the moment. This wasn't clean football. It wasn't smooth or comfortable. It was tense, awkward, and heavy with pressure. Every snap felt like it carried extra weight. Yet instead of watching a young quarterback unravel, you watched him stay present. No frantic body language, no rushed decisions to make up for what went wrong, just a steady refusal to let the game spiral. That's what made this win feel so unnatural. Cleveland wasn't dominating, they were surviving. And in a matchup designed to punish inexperience, survival alone is usually impossible. The Steelers had every opening they needed. Momentum, turnovers, history on their side, and still, somehow, the Browns stayed standing. But the reason why wouldn't fully reveal itself until the game took another unexpected turn. Then, the one thing that couldn't happen did. In the middle of a game already teetering, Harold went down. No warning, no slow build, just a sudden absence that changed the shape of the offense instantly. For a rookie quarterback, that's not just losing a player, it's losing a reference point. The guy you trust when reads collapse, the outlet that keeps drives alive, the rhythm you've been leaning on without even realizing it. This is usually where things unravel, when a young quarterback starts forcing throws to make up for lost production, or hesitates because the timing he practiced all week is gone. The protection shifts, the matchups change, the entire plan has to be rewritten on the fly against a defense that's already daring you to make another mistake. Most rookies feel that pressure all at once, and it shows. But instead of pressing, something unexpected happened. The offense didn't freeze. There wasn't a visible drop-off. The ball started moving in different directions. Sanders didn't chase what was missing. He redistributed the responsibility. Short throws replaced safety blankets. Decisions came faster, not slower. It wasn't flashy, but it was controlled. And that's what made this moment so dangerous and so revealing. Losing Harold could have been the excuse. It could have been the turning point everyone pointed to afterward. Instead, it became a stress test, one that exposed whether this quarterback would crumble when the structure disappeared, or adapt when it mattered most. This is where most coaches pull back. When the turnovers stack up and a key weapon goes down, the instinct is to protect the quarterback, shrink the playbook, and hope the defense can drag the team to the finish line. It's the safe move, the expected move, and in Cleveland, it's the move fans have seen far too many times before. Kevin Stefanski didn't do that. There was no visible panic on the sideline, no frantic play sequencing, no sudden shift into survival mode. The offense kept its shape, the tempo stayed intact, and most importantly, the responsibility stayed in Sanders' hands. That decision alone said more than any post-game quote ever could. Because coaches don't accidentally trust quarterbacks in moments like this. Trust is earned, snap by snap, especially when the game is threatening to slip away. Stefanski didn't just leave Sanders in the game, he let him continue to make real reads, take calculated shots, and manage critical downs. That's not babysitting, that's evaluation in real time. You could see it in Stefanski's body language, calm, measured, almost detached from the chaos everyone else felt. That kind of composure doesn't come from hope, it comes from belief. And when a head coach chooses stability over fear in a moment like this, it sends a message that ripples through the entire sideline. The question was never whether Sanders could avoid mistakes, it was whether he could be trusted after making them. And by not panicking, Stefanski quietly set the stage for the most important response of the night. This is the part of the game that doesn't show up in a stat line, the space between mistakes. The moments after everything goes wrong, when the next decision tells you who a quarterback really is. 2 interceptions don't just test your arm, they test your nerve. And for most young quarterbacks, that's where the game speeds up and control slips away. That's not what happened here. After each mistake, Sanders didn't chase redemption throws or try to erase the damage in one snap. He slowed the game down. The ball came out on time. The reads were cleaner. Instead of playing to avoid another error, he played to manage the moment. That distinction matters more than anything else at this stage of a career. You could see it in how he handled the pocket. No frantic movement, no panic escapes, just subtle resets, small adjustments, and a willingness to take what the defense gave him. That's presence, and presence is what keeps a team from falling apart when pressure starts stacking up. The Steelers kept testing him, waiting for the spiral. It never came. Every possession became proof that the earlier mistakes weren't contagious. Sanders stayed locked in, controlled the tempo, and kept the offense functioning even when perfection was off the table. He wasn't trying to be spectacular, he was trying to be reliable. And in a game designed to expose inexperience, that bounceback trade quietly became the difference. Not the throws everyone would replay, but the ones that stabilized everything. The kind of responses that make teammates breathe easier and coaches lean forward instead of pulling back. When the game ended, the most revealing moment didn't come on the field, it came at the podium. This is where coaches usually hedge, soften the message, or bury praise under a pile of qualifiers, especially after turnovers, especially after a win that wasn't clean. But Kevin Stefanski didn't sound conflicted at all. He acknowledged the interceptions without dancing around them, no excuses, no deflection. And then he moved on, deliberately. What he chose to emphasize wasn't arm talent or toughness or even the final drive. It was composure, resilience, coachability. Those aren't throwaway words. In NFL language, they're code. They're the traits coaches look for when they're deciding who they can build with, not just who can survive a week. What mattered just as much was what Stefanski didn't say. There was no hint of uncertainty, no suggestion that the mistakes changed how he viewed his quarterback. His tone wasn't encouraging, it was affirming, like someone confirming something he'd already suspected but now had evidence for. That distinction is subtle, but it's everything. And when a head coach offers that kind of validation publicly, it's never just for the cameras. It's a message to the locker room, to the staff, to the player himself. Mistakes will get corrected, pressure will keep coming, but the trust is real. And once that trust is established, it's incredibly hard to take back.
That's when it became clear this game wasn't being framed as a lucky escape. It was being framed as a checkpoint, one that quietly redefined how the Browns see their quarterback moving forward. Then Sanders took the microphone, and that's where the story sharpened. This is usually the moment when young quarterbacks either downplay mistakes or hide behind safe answers. Short responses, vague lessons. A lot of "we'll clean it up." Sanders didn't do that. He leaned into it. He didn't dodge the interceptions or brush them off as bad luck. He broke them down, talked about the reads, the timing, the footwork, what he saw, what he missed, and more importantly, what he'd do differently next time. That level of detail isn't common this early in a career, especially after a gritty win when it would have been easy to move on. What stood out even more was what he didn't make it about. There was no self-congratulation, no attempt to frame the night as a personal breakthrough. He shifted the focus outward, crediting the offensive line for holding up under pressure, the defense for giving him another chance late, the coaching staff for trusting him to keep attacking. That kind of balance is rare. Confidence without ego, accountability without insecurity. The tone wasn't apologetic, but it wasn't loud either. It was steady, grounded, like someone who understood the weight of the position without being overwhelmed by it. That's the kind of presence teammates notice immediately. It tells them this isn't someone riding emotion. This is someone processing the game in real time and storing the lessons for later. And in a locker room that's seen quarterbacks unravel under far less scrutiny, that calm ownership landed hard. It didn't just explain the win, it reinforced why the trust never wavered when things got messy. You don't need speeches to feel it when a locker room tilts. It shows up in glances, in body language, in how players respond after things go wrong. And in this game, even after the interceptions, even after the injury, that response never dipped. No hands on hips, no sideline isolation, no teammates looking away when the quarterback came off the field. That alone told a story the cameras rarely catch. There was a quiet steadiness around Sanders. Linemen stayed engaged, receivers kept coming back to him. The defense fed off the belief that the offense wasn't done. That doesn't happen by accident. Teams don't rally around quarterbacks they don't trust, especially not rookies, especially not in a division game that could have spiraled at any moment. As the game tightened, that belief started to materialize. Third down stops felt heavier. First downs felt louder. Each small success reinforced the sense that this wasn't a placeholder situation. Sanders wasn't being tolerated, he was being followed. And once that line gets crossed, everything changes. What made it even more telling was the absence of theatrics. No over-the-top celebrations, no forced energy, just quiet nods, helmet taps, controlled reactions. The kind of behavior you see when a group feels grounded instead of desperate, when they believe the guy under center can handle what's coming next. That shift didn't get announced in the post-game quotes, but it didn't need to. It lived in the way the team moved together down the stretch, and by the time the final moments arrived, it was clear this game had done more than add a win to the standings. It had reshaped how the Browns see themselves and who they're willing to lean on. This is the kind of game that looks ordinary at first glance and then ages completely differently. Weeks from now, when the season stretches and pressure compounds, this tape will get pulled back up, not because of explosive plays or perfect throws, but because of what it revealed when conditions weren't ideal. Coaches and analysts don't just study success, they study survival.
The interceptions will always be there in the footage, but they won't be the headline. What will stand out are the resets, the decisions made after things went wrong, the way the offense stayed functional even after losing a key piece. Those are the moments that quietly signal growth, the kind you don't fake and don't rush. For Sanders, this wasn't a highlight game, it was a foundation game. The kind that teaches you how to win when you don't have your best stuff, when the plan breaks, when the defense knows what's coming and dares you to blink. He didn't, and that experience changes how quarterbacks approach the rest of the season. For the Browns, it matters just as much. This wasn't about discovering a finished product, it was about identifying something sustainable, stability, a presence that doesn't evaporate under pressure. That's what teams build around, even if it doesn't dominate headlines right away. Years from now, if this trajectory holds, this will be one of those early chapters people point back to and say, that's when it started to look real. Not loud, not perfect, just solid enough to believe in. This wasn't a coronation. No one stood at a podium and declared a savior. There were no promises made about the future, no bold claims about what this season will become. And that's exactly why this moment matters, because the most important shifts don't announce themselves. They settle in quietly, almost unnoticed, until everything around them starts to change. What happened here wasn't about erasing mistakes. It was about how those mistakes were handled. Stefanski didn't pull back. The locker room didn't fracture. Sanders didn't deflect or disappear. Everyone stayed aligned when the easiest thing would have been to splinter. That alignment is rare, especially in a place that's seen more quarterback resets than continuity. Cleveland didn't find perfection in this game. They found stability, a quarterback who can sit in the fire, absorb the heat, and keep the operation moving forward. That's not hype, that's substance, and substance lasts longer than any single performance. This win didn't solve everything. It didn't close the book on doubt, but it did something just as important. It changed the tone. It gave the Browns a reference point for what winning under pressure can look like with this quarterback. And once that reference exists, it's hard to ignore it. Sometimes the biggest declarations aren't spoken at all. They're made in decisions, in trust, in who you lean on when things get uncomfortable. And in that sense, this game said plenty.